Hey everybody, it's Ken McElroy. I'm here with Real Estate Strategies again with my good friend Mike Ayala. Hey Mike.
Hey Ken, appreciate you having me.
Yeah, thank you. So as you guys know, one of the big issues right now that I've been writing a lot about and blogging about, and we've got some podcasts out there, is this issue on rent control. So the reason why states like Oregon and Washington and Illinois, well, Oregon's passed it, but those two, Washington and Illinois, are considering it, and is because rent growth is, really jumped, and landlords are rich and happy right now. It's not necessarily a good time to be a tenant, and and it's harder and harder to find things as we know. So the reason why I'm really happy to have Mike on this podcast is because his company, Four Peaks Capital, invests in mobile home parks. So he's basically got a very similar model that I have, except he's buying these mobile home parks. And it's funny because I used to manage mobile home parks. I've managed a bunch of them.
Really?
Yeah. It's a long story.
I didn't know that.
And, they're super unique, but I love the idea because it's kind of a covered land play. And it's a great affordability play, which is, how I started with this rent control. So, Mike, I would love to know, for a lot of people, I get a lot of this, people ask me all the time, what should I invest in? What should I invest in? And I'm always saying anything that's affordable. Yeah. That's what I say, because I believe that. Yep. I mean, there's a lot of people getting pushed out. And it's too bad. Like we have an affordability issue, in
Absolutely.
my opinion. So how did you get involved in investing into these mobile home parks?
Completely by accident. So I started a construction. I'm a plumber by trade. A lot of people don't know that. I went to a 4-year apprenticeship program. I was a commercial plumber, did casinos, high-rise buildings. So in 2004, I left the company I was working for and I started my own construction company. Perfect timing. Everything was great. We were on the Inc. fastest growing companies in America list. Like we were just rolling. It was some of this was luck, and it was beyond my skill level. The one thing that I always knew is what I didn't know. So I was always looking for somebody important to educate me. I was always hiring consultants, coaching, all of that. And that's what I love about you, is you're always learning and talking about that. So anyway, I always knew what I didn't know, and our company just scaled like crazy. We were spinning off cash left and right. And I had a tax problem.
Yeah.
So then, my CPA at that point in time was like, hey, you need to start investing in real estate. So I'm getting my brain around that. And then simultaneously, the coaching company that I was working with, we went and did this annual business planning. And the whole first day was around what you really want out of life and what are your goals. And that if this business wasn't helping you achieve your personal goals, then you didn't really own a business, you just had a job.
Right.
And so Karen and I started, they started asking the question, what do you really want? Which is part of what I still ask today. What do you really want? And so what we determined was that we were going to buy 2 income producing properties a year for 10 years. That was kind of my retirement plan. So immediately that year we came back, I bought two in year. When you set your intention and you really start looking, it's crazy the way the universe lines up and people just start hunting for you. You just tell people what you want,
that's right,
what you need, and they just start looking for it.
Surprisingly, but it's
crazy.
Yep.
So anyway, 2 income producing properties a year for 10 years, got 2 put down in year 1. And then all of a sudden this mobile home park deal fell in my lap. We were doing a bunch of plumbing work. This thing was beat up. I mean, the infrastructure,
Where was it?
Elko, Nevada.
Okay.
Yeah, I was in a gold mining town at that point in time. Yeah. And, the infrastructure was shot. Like, these homes, we were constantly changing out furnaces. And the guy that ran it, the manager, called me up one day and he's like, hey, his mom owned it. She was an investor out of Vegas. And this was, I think, 07, 08. We were coming into Vegas was beginning to tank. And so he said, my mom's going to sell this thing. She's in trouble in a development. She needs cash. And he's like, she wants $80,000 down. And there's a first position note on it that a private investor holds for $370,000. You give her $80,000 cash. The guy will let you assume the note. But she needs to close in 15 days. Oh, she's going to lose everything.
That's awesome.
It was awesome, but I was scared, man. I was like,
you had the competitive advantage on the construction side. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of people don't, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you saw it. So I love that. That's how I started. When you saw the deal, you could fix all that, right?
Yep. Yeah. And so, even with that, I knew the ins and outs of the park. I went and saw a mentor and I'm like, hey, what should I do? And he said, you're lucky you're my friend or I'd steal this deal from you. Why are you still sitting here? I'm like, she wants to close in 15 days. I can't even get escrow done in 15 days. He's like, this is exactly what he said to me. go get the deal done. If something goes wrong, I'll buy it from you. That's how good of a deal this is.
That's nice.
So I'm just sitting there still, and he's like, now what? What's the problem? I'm like, I don't have $80,000. So he loaned me the $80,000 cash in second position. And
I love this
so that's
guy.
how I got into real estate
Good
investing.
for you, man. So a couple things. One, don't forget your CPA. How many CPAs recommend real estate?
Yeah,
Less than 5%.
Yeah, not very many.
Like, that's super smart. I don't know who you use, but hats off to them. And two, the goal setting. Like, a lot of people don't do that annually.
Right.
Like I do, you do, most of my friends do. You have to have goals. And, so that's actually what got you there, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then you put it out. And then 3, you had a mentor.
Yep.
So it's exactly the model, folks. Right?
Yeah, we can go home now.
Yeah, seriously. So that was. So tell me a little bit about the financial ramifications of that, like cash flow and all that stuff. You still own it?
I actually just sold it last year at quite a gain.
Nice.
Yeah, that was a good time. So it started out a little. I mean, it cash flowed from day one. But we were pouring a lot of money into it too. The infrastructure had been let go. There was a lot of empty spaces. But again, you brought this up. I had the ability to do a lot of that, and I had the team and the crew. And so if there was any lesson there, if I didn't have that team in place, I definitely would have bought a park that was undercapitalized, and I probably would have had a lot of challenges. But the fact that we were spinning off cash and I had the team to do it, it went.
You know what I like the best? You didn't have the money.
Right.
That's actually what I like the best.
Yeah.
And here's why. It's the number one excuse people use.
It's true.
I don't have the money. Right? You figured it out. I'm just saying, like, this is the number one thing, the biggest obstacle most people have is I don't have the money. In this particular case, you had the opportunity,
Yep.
right? So right now, our problem is we have the money, we don't have the opportunities,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's harder to find deals than it is money.
And the crazy thing about going into that deal too, as we worked on the infrastructure and I leveraged, I don't even know how many times I borrowed money against that park as we, increased the value and increased the occupancy, and so
Tax-free too,
yeah,
right?
Totally.
Yeah. And what he's talking about there is as he grew the value, he went back to the bank and would scoop a little money out. And so the same way you would do that on your house. If your house doubled in value and you went and got some money from the bank, it's a cash out refinance, right? And you use that. So now your park is paying for everything else.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, and you talked a little bit ago about excuses. People are always making up these excuses. We were going through a period of time where gold was going up, and this was a gold mining community. And the problem that I had is I had empty lots. And so I'm like, well, how do I get homes in here? And so I went to the RV dealership and I said, hey, you guys got any used RVs? They were putting a gas pipeline through there. All this work was booming. And they said, yeah, we've got a ton of them that people trade in. And they said, we'll carry them for you.
Oh my gosh.
And so I went and just started buying RVs and putting them down and carrying the notes to people that would just live in these RVs.
That's awesome.
That was crazy.
Oh, that's good. Good for you, man. So there's a lot of ways to make money in this world. And thank you for that. So now you're in the business. So what benefits do you find in mobile home parks over traditional housing? Like, what are you seeing in that space?
So one of the things that really drove us initially to continue investing, so I sold that company in 2014, and then we just decided to, pretty much go into real estate full time. We still have a construction company, a property management company. But the reason why I stayed in the manufactured housing business was because, apartments were, as you know, it was getting harder and harder to find deals in 2014, 2013, 14. And it's getting even harder now. And we were still finding pretty good deals on mobile home parks at that point in time, because the barrier to entry, I think, is a little bit more difficult than maybe some of the other asset classes, because there's not a lot of property management companies, et cetera, that do a good job of managing mobile home parks. And so that's what initially kept us going down that road. We were still seeing good deals on properties. That's changed. It's getting harder and harder to find deals there. A lot more money is interested in mobile home parks than there was 5 years ago.
Yeah, I know. It's fun to watch CBRE and some of the bigger companies are now sending them around just like they do, anything. So before, nobody really focused on them at all. So you guys hit the market at a good time, though, I think, at least. You got a lot under your belt. I know a lot of people associate, low income housing, even my stuff, like a C property with bad tenants. It's just not the case. I mean, these are folks I know in a lot of cases, we're helping out a single mother with kids, for example, and, they're not a bad tenant. You know what I mean? They're just having a tough time financially. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because mobile home parks kind of have this stigma. You see them in the, the movies and stuff like that. And there's always problems at apartments too. But let's just talk about that for a second.
Yeah. So, and you taught me this just by watching you and listening to a lot that you say. When challenges create opportunities as well. And so even, the CEO are, the big guys that are coming into it, Marcus and Millichap, they're putting out these 500 space communities that are, Class A communities. That's not really the community that we're buying. We are buying affordable housing communities in the Midwest and Southeast. And so sometimes there's a problem that creates an opportunity for us. And as long as, we're not undercapitalized, and as long as we go in and change the rules and regulations from the beginning and don't put up with all that garbage, I can't say that we don't have challenges going into it, but it's all about turning that property around. And by the way, 99% of the residents that are in any community are probably genuinely good people.
I think it's all
just
are.
It's the 1 to 5% of people that want to, cause problems, sell drugs, raise a ruckus. So as long as we do our job and we go in there and get that stuff cleaned up and we support the mom that you were talking about, that's just trying to, she's going to work. She's working 2 jobs sometimes. She's just trying to put food on the table for her kids. That's really I'll be honest with you. There's a passion part behind this too. I lived in a 1-bedroom, 1-bath, 1976 single wide, with a brother and a sister and my mom and dad. So there was 5 of us, 1-bedroom, 1-bath. Those were some of the best times of my life.
Yeah.
Man. Like I didn't know any better. Like, just living in this community, we were out just raising heck, and I didn't know what I didn't have. And so when I look back at that too, we all want the same thing. Our mission at Park Place Communities and Four Peaks Capital Partners is to provide safe, clean, affordable communities where people want to live. And as long as we don't put up with the garbage, it's just like anything else. We just got to set the ground rules.
I know. It's interesting. There's a very small percentage of ownership and property management companies that allow that. The professional ones don't have any of these problems. Every once in a while somebody slips through, but the truth is we have, 10,000, 15,000 tenants. I never hear about evictions or any problems that we have because our screening criteria is so tight. What's yours like on a mobile home park? How does it work?
Yeah, so this is where it gets a little bit interesting because our model generally is like we want the resident to own their home. Now, that's not going to happen overnight. We do have a lot of rentals, but about 50% of the homes in our communities are owned by us. And the goal is to always get that to about 80 to 90% of the residents actually owning their home. And so the screening criteria is the same for us, whether it's a resident coming in to rent that home or to buy that home. And this is going to blow your mind, but we won't go below a 500 credit score, which sounds crazy to the normal property manager. They've got to have a year of employment, no evictions in the last 12 months. If they don't have a year, we'll kind of look at that and see, was there an extenuate, did they just change jobs and what was the previous employer? So it's kind of the same standards. We're just a little lighter, right? The other thing too is just the affordability. They have to make 2 times what they're going to be paying, which I know that's probably not a normal criteria for a normal, our average resident is living on $600 a week or less. So we have to be a little bit careful about, setting these high criteria. 41% is kind of our threshold on the income.
Okay.
We won't, that's our desire, but we'll go to like 50%. So
good for you.
Yeah.
Well,
no felonies, no sex offenders, that kind of stuff.
But of course, those kinds of things. It's interesting. Like people don't realize a credit score can go low quickly with just a medical issue. These could be good people making decent money and, they're having a tough time with something medically that happened, or maybe they just didn't have work for just a short period of time or whatever it might be. These are good people generally. That's been my experience.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And the thing we have to be, so back to, the resident owning that home. This is where the eviction laws get a little bit crazy because if they own the home, it's harder for us in most states to evict them. So we got to be a little careful about riding that line and not just letting anybody in. And so, we've created a cash credit program where basically they can come in and once they get the down payment, we convert to ownership. But that's kind of our we will not we will not budge on that down payment on the home on the ownership side because it gets pretty difficult to evict.
Yeah, I would imagine. Yeah, that's cool. So when you're picking an area, because we talk a lot about crime rates, right? I remember one time I was meeting with the mayor, and they called these. I know it was like they picked 10 properties in the Phoenix Metro and they called them the slumlords, and they were going after them. It was really a marketing angle, but it was good. It was needed because they weren't good owners of properties. And he asked me, he's like, hey, why don't you take a look at these? And I was like, I'm going to buy all 10, know. And then I looked at them. I'm like, oh, sorry, dude. You can't, you will never manage your way out of a bad neighborhood. You know what I mean? You can fix the property, but the external influences, so, as far as crime rate goes, what are some of the things that you guys look at as you're selecting a property?
So the amount of police calls, which is available information, you can get that. That's a huge thing for us.
Yep.
And it's not, for us, it's not hard and, there can't be any police calls, but it's the level of calls, it's the severity. We just passed on a deal. It was actually in Illinois, which that brings up this isn't the only reason why we passed on that deal, but there had been like 117 police calls in the last 12 months on this property.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a check of ours. Right. I imagine every park we've ever bought had a level of police calls. It's going to happen. But
I buy properties where we have, numbers high. I mean, it's a people don't understand it's a management issue. Now, it could be a neighborhood issue too, but a lot of times these are opportunities. You know what I mean? Like if you've got a lot of crime and stuff going on somewhere, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad investment. Right? You can clean a lot of that up. We did that in San Antonio on a property, and the neighbors were just like, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. The last owner was letting anybody live here. You know what I mean? And so now their kids are out playing in the streets and all that stuff. Before they were like, afraid. And so there's a lot, there's a cool social piece that owners, landlords, contribute to the overall well-being of a neighborhood. Right? You can make a big difference.
And when you do find one of those properties that is a little bit on the high side, but we still move forward with it, just budgeting in security for the first 6 months to drive through 3 times a night can help a ton with that. The local police departments are always, they love helping out.
Like it's work for them.
Yeah.
They don't, right? I know we used to do was used to give them a free one. And then you just park their cruiser at the entrance.
I like it.
Like, listen, we'll give you this. You can have it. Like, we'll give you a free apartment.
That's smart.
But you have to bring your cruiser and leave it at the entrance every night. So, you can sleep there, do whatever, but every single night you have to bring your cruiser home. And that helps.
And start talking police officers into moving into our parks.
Oh, they love it, dude. Yeah. I mean, who doesn't want free rent, right? And it's this nice for, it's a win-win, dude. Trust me. Thanks, Mike. Awesome.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks, Ken.